Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and we have more details about iOS 18 and what to expect with the apps and design. We also have more information about the upcoming Let Loose event with the M4 iPads and much more. This is your weekly Apple News update for the week of April 29th, 2024. Now, the Delta Emulator is one of the most popular apps right now. In fact, it's the most popular app in the App Store that's free. So if you've been wanting this or using this, it's now coming to the iPad according to the developer. On his post on Threads, he posted here that yes, it's coming soon, and they're just working on last-minute bugs. So that should be available soon as, like I mentioned, it's the most popular free app in the App Store right now, and I'm sure it will be on the iPad as well. HomePod and HomePod Mini are finally launching in Turkey, Thailand, and Malaysia on May 10th. If you're in one of those countries, the pre-orders for HomePod and HomePod Mini are already live. You can see it on Apple.com or the Apple Store, and you'll be able to go in there, pre-order it, and then pick it up or have it delivered depending on if you have an Apple Store or not. So that's something that's available now. Let me know if you've picked one up or what you think about the HomePod in general. Last week, many users were automatically logged out of their Apple ID accounts, and when trying to get back in, it required them to reset their password. The issue started somewhere around 8 p.m. and was locking people out of their accounts as well. So it seems this issue has since been resolved, but many actually complained of it. So I know someone personally that they were messaging me from a different account because they were locked out of their other one that they usually use with iCloud. So let me know if you actually had this problem. I thankfully didn't run into that, but I know many people did. Apple's Let Loose event is expected to have additional in-person components in London. I mentioned this the other day, but there's been an update to it where it seems that they'll be inviting content creators from Europe and abroad to gather at the Battersea campus for a multi-day event. While there's no additional details, it could actually be for the launch of maybe the Vision Pro, since it hasn't launched outside the USA yet, and maybe training people or showing people what it's about, how it works, and everything else. So that would make a lot of sense if it goes along with that, but it could be something else entirely, as we don't know any of the details. Apple already has streaming rights for MLS, but now they're working to gain similar rights for the FIFA World Cup, according to New York Times. Just like you were able to go into the TV app and watch Friday Night Baseball and MLS and others, you'll be able to hopefully soon do that with FIFA as well. Again, that's according to the New York Times. Apple's in the works to get that deal, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. A recent report from Canalys shows that Apple continues to do worse in China. In the first quarter of 2024, Apple is actually now in 5th place. They were selling a lot of iPhones before, but it seems people are just not upgrading, and there's some issues with that as they've got a lot of different great phones in China, and people aren't stuck in Apple's ecosystem. So that's something that we're seeing more and more of. However, in the US, the iPhone continues to dominate. A new report about Apple Vision Pro from Ming-Chi Kuo says that Apple has cut their shipment estimates for 2024 from about 700,000 to 800,000 to half of that at 400,000 to 450,000 units. Now, Ming-Chi Kuo has indicated that the demand actually has fallen off sharply. However, earlier reports sort of conflict with this, as Apple was only said to originally be planning to make about 450,000 units for 2024. So this is a little bit confusing, but Kuo is usually accurate on supply chain changes, so maybe they were a little bit more ambitious at first and then cut back or something else. But Apple is also said to be looking at their current strategy for the device and making changes as needed. Last week, the Apple Vision Pro marketing head, Frank Casanova, is now set to retire. So maybe he just wanted to launch one last device, and Bloomberg reported on this that he's retiring, and this could be a coincidence, or maybe he just doesn't want to work on Vision Pro or thinks he's done. We don't really have details, but I think it's just odd timing. Mark Gurman has also said Apple Vision Pro will not get a follow-up device, such as the Apple Vision Pro 2, until at least late 2026. Since it's only in the United States right now, giving it another year to sort of go throughout the US, other countries as well, and see how it does makes a lot of sense to see if Apple will continue to invest in more Vision Pro products or if they're working on something different entirely. But Apple is usually 3 years ahead on iPhones, so I'm sure they've got the next one in development already. Now, TSMC, who manufactures Apple's silicon chip designs, has revealed a new 1.6 nanometer process to start in 2026. The smaller size usually leads to more efficient power consumption and thermal management in a smaller package. So if we swipe over here, you can actually see the announcement from TSMC, who celebrated their 30th North American Technology Symposium with that new innovation. So that's a pretty incredible size to think that we're almost down to 1.5 nanometers in size, and we thought we'd never get past about 4 nanometers. Recent charts posted by David Shaw, shown on Mastodon and also recently on the Accidental Tech podcast, show that the base RAM configuration really hasn't changed much since Tim Cook took over in April of 2011. So Apple actually used to give more and more RAM, and then once he took over, it kind of sort of flatlined and hasn't changed since. Now at that time, 8 gigabytes was fine, but right now, there's arguments you could say that that's not great for a base configuration, especially given that RAM is pretty inexpensive at this point. So hopefully Apple bumps this up, gives us 16 gigabytes to start. The EU is at it again, and they pushed through a new ruling that would require additional warranty time and cheaper prices for out-of-warranty repairs. According to the right to repair legislation, the EU will require companies to extend the warranty of a device that's been repaired with an additional year of coverage. If the device is out of warranty, then a reasonable repair price must be made available. The law would also stop software locking of those different components. So maybe you have an iPhone that's broken, but you have a similar iPhone next to it that has a good display, and they both have broken components. You could just easily swap those without having to actually going to Apple and having them unlock the device or anything like that. That's something that's currently going on. If you try to swap displays, oftentimes they won't work. So it's going to prevent measures like that. The EU is also now considering iPadOS as a digital gatekeeper device. That means they'll have to fully comply with EU laws, just like iOS, which means sideloading updates will now apply to the iPadOS version as well. So that means we should have sideloading here, third-party app stores. All of the same changes that were made in iOS should be carrying over soon to iPadOS to comply with laws. So all of that sideloading should be made available. As far as when they have to do that, I'm not exactly sure at this point, but hopefully they'll do that very soon. And I would love to see them do that around the world and just make it consistent. I would like to try it out. It's something you don't have to use, but I'd like to just have it there. Now, there's all sorts of deals this week, and I wanted to mention a few, and the first one has to do with iPad Air. And while we're expecting a new iPad Air very soon, the current one is now down to $399 at Best Buy. However, I would probably wait until after the Let Loose event next week to see if they drop it further at different places and sort of get rid of their inventory. So if you've been wanting an iPad Air, I'd probably hold out, but if you need one right now, they're down to $399. Of course, there's discounts on the current 10th gen iPad, which isn't expected to be replaced this next week, as well as other things with AirPods Pro 2, which I've talked about before at $189.99, and then other deals on things such as Apple Pencil and Apple Watch. So I'll link all of those in the description below. iOS 17.5 Beta 4 is expected as soon as tomorrow. Typically, we're on a weekly schedule as we get to about Beta 3 or Beta 4. From Beta 2 to Beta 3 was 1 week. Now we can expect this as soon as tomorrow or Wednesday. So I would think iOS 17.5 Beta 4 probably tomorrow, with the release candidate, which is the final version released to developers and public beta testers before it comes out to the public, probably after the event on May 7th. Then, based off what we know in the past, probably on the 13th or 14th, we'll have the public release. So iOS 17.5 could come out on the 13th or 14th. There's still no sign of iOS 17.4.2, so Apple's probably hard at work on 17.5 along with iOS 18. So that's what we expect as far as releases, with iOS 18 Beta 1 releasing probably on June 10th after the Apple event, and then we'll have that first version to go along with probably iOS 17.6 betas as well. Now, WWDC, of course, is on the 10th, and we expect many things with iOS 18, and with that first beta release, or iOS in general, we have more details about what to expect. With iOS 18 this time around, we have a lot of different apps that are apparently getting updated. In the Weekly Power On newsletter, Mark Gurman said that Apple's overhauling many apps in iOS 18, including Photos, Notes, Fitness, and Mail. There's no details specifically about the apps other than that they're being reworked, but we can expect AI integration of some sort. Mark Gurman also said that Apple is again in talks with OpenAI to utilize some of their AI know-how and with Google to use Gemini technology. However, Apple is still said to be planning on-device-only generative AI models for privacy. So while they may license some of the technology that's already been developed, it seems it will only be on-device, at least to start with. Apple continues to release more large language AI models that run on-device and are open source. Apple recently posted a bunch of new models on the Hugging Face repository for sharing AI code. So those are available now if you want to read all about them, how they work. They're now on that website, and I'll link it in the description. Unfortunately, though, Mark Gurman has now said don't expect a full redesign of iOS 18, but major changes throughout that would still represent the largest change since the initial launch of iPhone. So what that means specifically, we don't know, but I would expect some sort of redesign to icons. Of course, we'll be able to put our apps wherever we want. Maybe we'll have a new control center. That's something I would love to see, but if it's going to be the biggest update ever, it better have quite a few significant things. Of course, many people are excited for the new calculator app that's coming to iPad that we learned about later last week. So the calculator app is expected on the iPad, and Apple had originally said that they wouldn't do anything with the calculator until they could do something special. So maybe they have an AI model integrated into it with an all-new design. So all of those things are coming soon, and we can expect those changes in just a few weeks. So we're getting closer and closer to iOS 18, and that's where all of the major changes will come. With iOS 17.5, there's not a whole lot to be excited for at this point. Apple is also working on custom processors for AI-based servers. This makes sense for Apple to do this to keep the focus on privacy, but this is also done with companies like Google with their tensor-based servers. So it seems pretty likely that Apple's already been working on this for quite some time. We're just about a week away from Apple's new Let Loose event, where we expect Apple to introduce updated iPads and Apple Pencils. This week, Mark Gurman has said that there's a strong possibility that we'll see the M4 chipset in the new iPad Pro models. It's a bit of a surprise if Apple's planning to release that already, but we did expect it toward the end of the year. But it would be the first chipset to utilize AI features coming up in iPadOS 18. So that's what we can expect with that. And also the Apple Pencil is expected to get a really nice update that was a little bit unexpected, where it would have a squeeze gesture we've talked about, but also haptic feedback. So maybe you squeeze it, it activates some feature, and we know that because it vibrates a little bit. It could also give us a haptic feedback of what a pencil feels like on the display of the iPad itself. So maybe they're going to utilize some different features like that. Of course, it would require a bigger battery to have that last a little bit longer. Additionally, we'll get an update to the Magic Keyboard, it seems, where this could have a metal cover instead of this sort of silicone cover that doesn't seem to wear very well after a couple of years and gets to the point where it starts to peel for some people. I've had the A key start to wear off, so it's held up fairly well for a couple of years of regular use, but it definitely could use some sort of replacement. One odd bit of news that we're hearing differences from this week is that the 12.9-inch iPad Air that's expected to be updated soon was originally going to use the same mini LED display as the iPad Pro. According to Ross Young, who's been very accurate about displays, this will not be the case, and he actually posted that on X or Twitter to his subscribers. So it seems it's just going to be a regular LCD display and not the mini LED display that we currently have. Ross Young also noted that the new 12.9-inch iPad will also have a mini LED display, but sometime later in the year. So we could have this mysterious iPad that's coming a little bit later that we didn't expect. While we won't see the next iPhone until later in September typically, the first models, or dummy units as they're called, were shown by Sonny Dixon on Twitter or X. You'll see them here, what they basically look like. They show off what we can expect as far as the overall design to the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro and Pro Max models and the 16 Plus. So basically what we were expecting with a new camera orientation for the regular models and a very similar look to the current models. However, we are expecting a capture button and maybe some changes internally also, with sort of a matte finish that's similar to the non-Pro models we have today. Now, Apple Watch is also expected to get an update, hopefully sometime this year, around the time of the launch of the iPhones, and we're expecting some little changes, but not anything major. However, in recent news from DigiTimes, they said that the next Apple Watch models would start using a new method to allow for a logic board that takes up less space. This would allow for more room for sensors or a larger battery, and they're using what's called resin-coated copper to achieve that thinner size. So we could actually get some better battery life. I would imagine that's what Apple's using it for, where you can shrink components more and more to fit them in the watch to allow for much more battery or maybe some other sensors we weren't expecting. So hopefully we'll see a major redesign with the Apple Watch 10 or X later this year. So that's all the news this week. Lots of news about iOS 18 and of course that upcoming event. Let me know what you're looking most forward to in the comments below. And are you planning to buy a new iPad this year, or are you happy with the one you have, or you don't use an iPad? Let me know in the comments below. I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.